What that mouth do? A big thank you to our $25 patron, the Mr. Greed. Before we jump into this review of chapter 58 of Record of Ragnarok, please do me a favor, leave your own notes on the chapter in the comment section down below, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, make sure that little notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, please have a Patreon down below, and I appreciate any support you're willing to give. Now, let's get into it. What's up, guys? I got a pencil and here we are doing chapter 58 of Record of Ragnarok, which is known as Blindfold, aka you might as well just put the darn thing back on. Like, if it's going to do that much, it may not be worth it. However, let's hop right into the chapter itself. So we open up, and we get to see that Hwang has gotten back up, and he is indeed fighting ready. However, I'm not going to lie, like, as I've been reminded multiple times, this series does, and thank you for that. Like, I always tend to forget, so I always call the mangaka as if they're one unit, but it is like a multi-artist team and a separate writer. However, like, at times, you can definitely tell the variances in artwork, because, like, that face of Hwang is just, I mean, it's still good. It's better than anything I could do, but comparable to some of the art within this very chapter, it's not the best. However, we can see the more interesting thing is that Hades is like, well, I'll be. You can take one of my attacks and still smile. I would expect nothing less from a king. And honestly, that's lightweight character development pretty darn quickly. Like, this fight's been going on in real time for probably about like 5 minutes, but Hades is like, yo, I'm not going to refer to you as a lesser king. I'm not going to say you're a king of mere men. He literally just says, I'd expect nothing less from a king. So even if inadvertently, I'm glad that Hades already is developing respect for this human at least so quickly, because he literally just refers to him as a king. He's putting him on equal grounds as himself, even if subconsciously, which is really, really cool to see. And I don't know, this is a really dynamic pose that Hades strikes. I love the way I'm going to keep referring to them as mangaka because I'm not sure which artist draws which parts, so they're going to be the whole mangaka for this. But I love the way the artist drew this really dynamic pose of Hades, like the left foot planted into the ground, the right foot reeling back for the strike, the grip, like you can tell by the shadowing and the lighting, like the dynamism of his arm getting darker as it approaches his hand towards the back of the spear, how the spear bends almost to like barely fit within the frame but even leak out the pen. Like, it's a really cool dynamic shot, which is amazing. I really do love these little things like that. It makes me appreciate the art all the more. But of course, we get to see that as much as Hades respects the fact that Hwang is a king, he's not going to go easy on him because he immediately thrusts in, right? And notably, this definitely reminds me of Poseidon's own like spear thrust tactic, where he was just like straight up stabbing, and just like Sasuke did not that long ago. Well, it's been quite a while, but still, in terms of like this tournament, what Poseidon did is being mirrored by what Hades did, in the same way that what Sasuke did is being mirrored by what Hwang is doing. Like, Hwang is dodging, weaving, bobbing, and just rolling between the thrusts because he's noting that, you know what, it may not be to my advantage to actually block any of these. And notably, he does get like scraped consistently. So while he's dodging, he doesn't have that nigh on perfect defense that someone like Sasuke does or someone like Adam did. He's still like just barely avoiding taking those little slashes as opposed to just being directly run through, which is a testament to Hades' just raw speed, right? Because despite all, like, Hwang's eyes are out, the fact that he is taking this battle seriously, he still just can't dodge everything just because of how fast Hades is. And notably, we see that it's possible that Hwang may be taking this damage to let Hades' guard down, because according to Brunhild, right now with Hwang's look in his eyes, he's not necessarily outmatched because of all the damage he just took. He's waiting for an opportunity to use that technique. But I wonder, like, if it's the same technique that he used before to like block and redirect the force, is he really willing to risk that? Like, Brunhild, even in your mind, you've seen how much force Hades has behind his strikes and how much damage it can do. Like, you really think he's gonna try and take that head on? And speaking of tactics. Speaking of tactics, we see that when Hades goes to thrust in one more time, Hwang like manages to avoid it entirely and then wrap his arms around it. But the thing is, he thinks he avoids it entirely, except he does get cut across the stomach, and Hades pulls back. And I love that dynamic motion once again. Like, when Hades pulls back his spear, it like he has his grip loose enough that it slides back, so like straight, and then he grips it real firm when he gets right close to the head of the spear and then locks in and goes right for another one. Like, it's such a smooth transition. I'm not sure if you could actually feasibly do this with an actual spear. I don't wield spears for a living, but the way that Hades does it, it's such a clean motion where he lets it draw back, goes back, and gets right ready for another Earth Crusher. And it's amazing because he just like whips out what was an extremely powerful attack, like literally a chapter ender at what was last chapter, just so casually. Like, he pulls it out just again out of nowhere, using his max strength, pulls back and swings down. And this time, once again due to the pure speed and what Hwang is thinking, he doesn't try to avoid it, he still blocks it. And notably, he's doing better this time than he did last time, because he's like holding off a bit. And who knows, this could be because Hades didn't give himself enough wind up. He didn't necessarily do the whole momentum movement thing that he was doing last chapter, but Hades is replicating pretty much everything. Like, he swung the spear down, he has his hand on the other hand, he's pushing down with all his force, and he is cracking the ground beneath him. But Hwang is just like, I mean, I was gonna say Hwang is chilling, but as you can see by the panel where his face, he's gritting his teeth and his eyes are wide open, he's far from just chilling. But notably, when we see this shot of, which is once again like the camera angle, it's weird to say camera angles in a manga, right? But like the angles that the mangaka chooses to draw from, like this downward, it's almost like we're planted right in between Hwang's feet and we have a camera view directly up. Like, we see the power lines rising up from the impact of the spear, and we see Hwang struggling to hold it up, and his whole body is shaking from the amount of force behind it that he's trying to catch and redirect, or at this point pretty much just hold. He's not even trying to redirect it like he did before. And notably, both of our most gullible characters, admittedly, in Goal, is it Goal or Gear? Because I read Goal in this chapter too. Which one is it? And either Goal or Gear, and Ares are like, well, he's done, son. But of course, we get a very deep close-up on Hwang's eyes. And for the first time, I think since they've been revealed, they actually take on like a solid shape. Like, hold on, let me go to the end of the last chapter. We don't see him because he's covering with the blindfold for so long. And then by the time we actually do get to see him in this chapter, they're very foggy. Like, they aren't necessarily focused on anything. They're like white swirls around in his irises, so he doesn't necessarily take any defined shape. However, after this impact and as he's struggling, the misty white in his eyes solidifies into stars. And when it does that, he takes in a deep breath and then proceeds to just like, it's like water gun without the water. Like, I don't know, he straight air pressures a shot. And it's really interesting because, like, I mean, I guess Hades is in the middle of the attack, so he wouldn't assume to dodge it. But I wonder if this is visible, right? Like, is this an actual, like, smoke puff or steam ball that he sends out? Or the reason Hades didn't dodge it? Because Hades doesn't even really seem to notice it. Like, it goes towards him and then it lands on his arm, but he doesn't even seem to realize that it landed there until, like, the force literally vanishes. Like, you see Hades' pressure loosen up once the air makes contact, because after, like, the gust blows past him, the spear isn't solid anymore. Like, before the air ball comes in contact, his grip on the spear is solid, but the moment it comes in contact, you see the spear start to wiggle because he's not holding it as firmly as he was anymore. And then, of course, with his force getting weaker, Hwang manages to straight up, and this is kind of metal, I'm not gonna lie, because he's grabbing the spearhead with, like, mostly bare hands. Like, his guards only cover maybe one, two, like half of his fingers, quite literally. So he's grabbing this likely very sharp weapon with enough force to wholeheartedly flip Hades, and he proceeds to, like, reverse. Like, Hades did a backflip over Hwang, but now this backflip is being forced upon him because Hwang literally, it's so cool because, like, he forces up the spear, right? Which actually kind of is weird. How does he do that? I mean, actually, that's kind of weird. Oh, well, no, he's spinning the force, right? So he literally pushes up, or I guess maybe pulls down. Like, is notably the spear. Oh, okay, I get it. I think the spear slips out of Hades' grasp because of the shock of his body getting weaker, so it slams into his armpit. And then with that force, Hwang manages to start twirling the spear around, creating a vacuum effect, essentially tying Hades to the spear, and then wholeheartedly body slams this man. And it was honestly satisfying to see that heavenly-handed defense kick in so hard that he literally, like Hwang does that whole flip and Hades is just slammed into the ground wholeheartedly, spear buried right where his other spear is. And I know that hurt. He literally coughs up blood from the impact. However, just like Hades in last chapter, Hwang, why did you let go of the spear? Like, once you saw he had his hands off of it, I mean, maybe not, because notably, Hades does still have his left hand on it. At least it seems to be. Its hand is covered by the swirling smoke, but while he has his hands off, I would have grabbed that thing and launched it. Like, maybe Hwang doesn't want to throw hands with Hades, like legit 1-to-1 boxing with him, but I would have risked it. I would have definitely thrown away his weapon and been like, all right, you got to throw hands with me now. I'm not giving this back to you. But essentially leaves the spear with Hades. And of course, Hwang does... He isn't about to waste his time. I'll give him credit on that. He readies his 2 spear fingers and lunges in. And I wonder what he's going to be doing. Or, like, if he had gotten there in time before Hades had recovered. And to be fair, like, Hades recovers insanely quickly. Like, after coughing blood and being slammed on the ground like that, having his chest literally caved in by his own weapon, it is kind of crazy how Hwang goes in for the lunge, 2 fingers, probably ready to, like, pierce his jugular or something. And Hades just out the dust, right? Like, it's weirdly battle tactics that you don't see in Record of Ragnarok so often. Like, we haven't gotten a really like tactics, redirection, misdirection kind of fight since Hercules versus Jack, where Hades uses the smoke screen that's produced by his own being slammed into the ground in order to try and impale Hwang. And Hwang just like barely dodges it too. Like, you can literally see Hwang's leg is like right next to the spear. Like, straight up, if he was probably like half a second later in dodging the spear, he would have been run through by it, or at least impaled on his leg, and that would have been a leg gone. And Hwang lands, and Hades, after thrusting out, he's still recovering, right? Like, because being slammed to the ground that hard still definitely did some damage to him. So we see that Hades is still a bit confused, like, wait a minute, how did he do that? And interestingly enough, he doesn't comment on the fact that his strength lessened. He comments on the fact that his attack was redirected. So, did he not know? Like, it makes me really wonder if he didn't notice anything about the airstream, because it would make sense that he could redirect your attack, Hades, if it got weaker. But I guess he's maybe more concerned about the fact that that slam against the ground did so much damage to him, and he doubts that Hwang has enough, like, his own unique strength to do that to him. And of course, we get to see that, actually, hold on, that's interesting. Oh, so he did he, hold on, let me go back to the back of the chapter. I'm trying to see something. Did Hades have that? I think he did. Didn't he have damage in his chest before? Yeah, he had damage in his chest before. So I'm not exactly sure what, like, because the thing is, after Hades is in this, like, how did he damage me? How did he redirect my ability? Hwang just takes a glance at him. Like, notably, he just looks at him with his eyes, which once again have changed. Like, they're back to that misty state. They aren't really on star mode anymore. They're back to that puffy state. And then in his eyes, you see the reflection of the damage on Hades. And the thing that happens to him in response is that his own chest starts to hurt. Like a sympathetic empathy thing. But the thing is, did that even come from, like, I don't think that hole in his chest came from that, because Hwang specifically dodged the thrust, and then unless the damage from the hole is meant to like cover the entire spear slamming into him thing, I don't know why his eyes reflected that. But I guess maybe his eyes, if they just view damage on any person, they reflect it onto him. So that's probably why he wears a blindfold all the time, or else he die. But we get to see that despite taking all that pain, like what seems to be a very drastic amount of pain too, like almost on some, once again, I haven't read One Piece, but I know about that one thing that Kuma does, like the nothing happened moment where he has to take all this pain. He just grins and bears it and is like, I bet, let's run it back. And I think that's really cool, right? Like, Hwang so far has been a character that has just been cool. Period, point blank, from his introduction to now, he's just been like about that action, and that's been one of the best parts about his character. So it's cool to see that even with something that seems to be a very defined weakness of him, like the reflection of his enemy's pain onto himself, he's still ready and willing to fight. And Hades is caught off guard, right? Because he's still trying to recover, but Hwang's giving him no time. So he's like, all right, bet. When he lunges in, Hades goes like, all right, fine, this is my domain of combat. I guess I'll just kill you right here, right now. But once again, Hwang does the breathing thing, and his eyes switch back into the star state where he inhales and then proceeds to fire out another air blast. And once again, Hades makes pretty much no attempt to dodge it. Like, he doesn't even acknowledge it happening, which is making me like, I'm not sure if he just can't see it, or if he just says, oh, it's air, I don't have to worry about it. Even though the last time an air blast came at him, it didn't do anything. But once again, it's air. So reasonably, there's no reason he should be seeing it. So I guess maybe there's just a visualization for us as the reader, and that's why Hades not noticing it. But I feel like he should at least see Hang like, or like maybe he's not making any sound when he does it. But it's strange that Hades just like sees this thing, or maybe he doesn't. That's the thing. Maybe he just doesn't see it. So when Hwang just puffs out a blast of air and it makes contact, like, notably, it hits in a different spot than last time. So, like, before it hit Hades directly on his shoulder, which caused him to lose strength in the arm that was holding his spear down. But this time, while Hades is charging, the blast hits him, and we see, like, what happens internally with Hades. So, beneath the skin, like, the blast impacts, and then seems to have this radius effect throughout his body, where it, like, ripples out and then slows him down. Like, it causes him pause for half a second because he notices something happened to him, and when Hwang lunges in, Hades is now too slow to even graze him, because notably every other previous time when Hades thrusted it out, it sounds so bad, when Hades thrust, it still landed a hit, right? Like, it still did a little bit of damage. It didn't miss entirely. Meanwhile, this time it does indeed miss entirely, with Hwang taking absolutely no damage, and Hwang thus proceeds to take his two spear fingers and just directly, and I'm not exactly sure where he stabs, because like the angle we see it from is kind of weird, but I'm assuming he stabs into the hole. Oh no, he stabs into the stomach. That's where he stabs. He stabs directly into Hades' stomach, and notably, the force from this just sends him flying. And this is the spear / halberd form of Mount Tai Dragon Claw. So that's the version of his specific martial art that he uses against Hades in this moment. And of course, everyone's shocked because it sends Hades flying. However, once again, this is just like a testament to Hades' durability. Like, he gets sent flying, but he manages to recover before going that far. Like, he only gets knocked back like a few feet before just planting his feet in the ground, dragging to a stop, and just be like, whew, what the heck? And everyone else is looking on shocked. Like, well, actually, no, Brunhild is happy. I guess she expected this. Gear is shocked. Hermes is like oddly indifferent. Like, I'm not sure if he's shocked or confused. Ares is obviously clearly shocked. Meanwhile, Sasaki and Isami are just laughing their heads off, while Soji's just like, whoa, this is amazing. And some of the previous kings of China are also in shock. So I wonder, like, does that mean when I mean, they reacted to seeing his eyes last chapter, so they likely know. But I wonder if when Hwang went and conquered them all, did he just like run the hands with them blindfolded? Did he not even take the blindfold off? Because if so, that's hilarious. But of course, we see that Hades has taken that big ol' pierce to the stomach. And notably, like, when the mangaka goes into deep detail, we see that, like, this pierce almost acted as like one unified strike, despite being two separate claws that may have left two separate indents or like incisions on Hades. Not together, they just got all up in his guts and like just started digging and swimming around. So now he just has a big old hole there, and it's pretty cavernous too. And notably, I'm not exactly sure what part of the body he stabbed, but if he has any similar to human physiology, I think that's near his liver, or at least it got some of his intestines. I know that. See, something in Hades is messed up now, so that's kind of crazy. And of course, humanity is going on to cheer, but we see the question that Hermes asks is like, wait a minute, Hades, like, this is the strongest dude outside of Dad himself. Like, what? Like, I don't think a mere stab should have done that to him, even if it was from a divine weapon. And even Hermes admits, like, yeah, I ain't even gonna lie, I ain't gonna cap. Hwang, that man's different. He's something else. He's a little bit freaky. I was gonna say a little bit Freaky Friday, but he's a little bit freaky funky, if you don't mind me saying that. And of course, Zeus pops up out of nowhere, and like, I always forget, like, some characters being alive always just slips my mind. But of course, this is Zeus. I'm pretty sure coming back after. Wait, no, I don't think he didn't go anywhere. Where the heck was he? But notably, we don't know where he... Hold on, let me check. Yeah, unless I'm missing something, we don't know where he was either. But Ares does note that he had been separated from something. But then we get to see that Zeus does give his brother some creds. And he's like, oh, he caught on to something. And while Zeus is laughing at his brother, Hades is like, I get it now. Get your breath. And we see that Hades, I guess now that he's finally focusing on what Hwang does, he gets to see that Hwang is doing this like breathing technique. So Hwang is a Demon Slayer character now. So for all y'all Demon Slayer, no, I'm kidding. But we get to, ooh. Is that Uniscaling? Yo, random power scale change it. But like, if Zeus was around to witness the Big Bang and was there before time, does Hades and Poseidon have to be there too, right? Like, did they all just chill out and watch the Big Bang together? Is Hwang universal but inaccessible and universal speed? Is that where we're going with Hwang right now? I'm not. I just thought about that for some reason, but there you go. Well, we see that Hwang is breathing in, and apparently, how Hades describes it is that the breath was used to strike at the crux of his power, and thusly, it kind of like disrupted the internal flow of Hades' biological energy or his natural inner strength. And that's what allowed him to simply like ignore both the raw power behind Hades' attack by diffusing it a bit, which you see with the spear shaking, and the strike on his chest essentially allowed him to throw off his entire body. By like causing that ripple effect to go out, he couldn't thrust with the same efficiency as before because his body was essentially out of whack, which allowed Hwang to slip in and then just gut him. And that probably also lowered his durability a bit because he couldn't focus, like he couldn't lock in his muscles properly. And that's why Hwang managed to just dig in so deep and send him flying. But obviously the effect isn't permanent or to last that long. That's why Hades was likely able to recover so quickly and land. And Hwang is like, well, you kind of right. I can see them all of the stars within you. And it's an interesting proclamation, right? But we get to see from Hwang's perspective what he actually sees within Hades. And when you're looking from Hwang's starry eyes, which do explode into more stars, there are multiple different points on Hades' body that seem to have power, or like power crux points or stars of weakness. And essentially, it's interesting because I'm not sure how much these align with pressure points, right? And I'm not sure what the signification means, because notably, I would think the size of the star means like the more valuable points you'll get if you hit it, right? Like if you were to stab him, what appears to be where his heart would be, like in his left chest, even though actually isn't the heart like located like a little bit beneath that? Like, but regardless, area where the heart is typically associated with has a big old one on it, and so do places like his wrists and his knees and stuff like that. But mainly wrists and heart, they pump blood, and obviously if your wrists get cut, it's not good for you. But at the same time, like his throat doesn't actually have that many stars on it, and you'd think a cut to the jugular would probably do him in. And his head notably doesn't have any weaknesses on it, which is also kind of strange yet interesting, because, you know, a stab to the head won't do you any good. So I'm kind of intrigued with what these story placements mean, and I wonder if this is like a hint to more of the whole narrative that godly biology is just different. Like from humanity, they may have different organ placements, they may have different values upon certain areas, and I honestly wonder what are the two big things on his back that are shining through, because notably Hades does have stars that come out behind him, like from behind his knees and especially behind his back. So what do those stars mean, and how is Hwang even perceiving them? But we get to see that, ironically enough, one of the Valkyries actually speaks up. Hers is actually kind of confused on how the whole technique works, as assumingly the audience would be as well. So essentially, this makes sense, because this kind of fighting style is kind of unique to, I guess, higher seasoned war. But then again, she's a Valkyrie. But maybe it's something that's likely not in their arsenal. The disruption of one's energy probably isn't their first prerogative on a fight. So Big Papa Sasuke comes out of the clutch and is like, oh, hold on, I can explain for you. So with all things, there's a flow of ki, and it's notably spelled Q-I. And like there's so many different, like there's ki, K, like there's ki in Black Clover, which is K-I, there's ki in Dragon Ball, which is either chi or ki, there's ki in Kingdom Hearts, which is either kai, but regardless, we get to see Sasuke essentially explain like life energy again. So notably, even the gods have that, and it's not necessarily different from humans, because even Hwang's eyes can pick up godly ki, which is interesting enough to see. But of course, with the crux of that flow of energy, with the flow of energy in any system, there would be like points in it where they like or overlap or are important. Like there are points in your body or joints that are very pivotal, and if one of those joints were to get destroyed, it could disable your whole arm. Like that's why tearing your Achilles is bad. Like if your Achilles tendon gets cut, your leg is bad, because these things happen. There are points of importance, and that applies to any system. Like, you can strike at certain areas on a bridge or something like that, and it would be less stable overall just because of how important that part is. Some places are more important than others. So this applies even to the key system within Record of Ragnarok, where by disrupting a key point, by striking the crux of power for people, you essentially disrupt their energy flow, and thusly they can't use their max strength, which is an interesting thing to do, because notably it almost reminds me of the concept of the Gentle Fist from Naruto, but the difference is when you got a Tenketsu point shut down, that thing was shut down unless you got external chakra flow. Meanwhile, it seems like these cruxes heal on their own, or at least like they realign themselves. So while something like the Gentle Fist will shut down a Tenketsu point, something like Hwang's air puffs, it won't exactly shut you down, but they will disrupt, once again causing that ripple effect which we see within Hades. So it's actually kind of interesting. So it seems like, according to Sasuke, these crucial points can be weakened just by breathing on them, because how important yet fragile they are. So apparently, while these are good places to strike, they're constantly moving, according to Kondo. They're like consistently shifting around because the target's moving for one, but the cruxes are consistently shifting, meaning the internal life energy of a person will be constantly moving and jiving, and essentially it all depends on where blood flow is going or energy flow is going, which is interesting. So I wonder if those stars that we see on Hades will change size depending on what kind of attack he's doing, because notably, when I think about it, the area that Hwang struck before with his first air puff, the side of his shoulder, or like whatever that part of your arm is called, it's not glowing there when we see the stars that Hwang sees. So does that mean for right now there's no energy focus there? It seems so. However, we see that Kondo's mainly wondering, like, well, as great as this is, considering how much they be moving and shifting, the only way you could actually use those in a combat scenario is if you could like sense them and know where they're going instantaneously. And according to Sasuke, it's pretty much impossible to do that. And notably, this comes from Sasuke of all people. So he knows of the concept, but even he didn't use it against someone like Poseidon because of how like random and how chaotic it is. But it seems like he's admitting that Hwang has a skill he doesn't in detecting those, and that relates to his starry eyes. And I love how like Soji needs to fight, bro. Soji just needs to fight, because I love how his only response here is like, oh wow, what I'd give to have a round with him. Because despite the fact that it's revealed that Hwang can apparently just see your very vital weak points, blow on them, and then disable you for a little bit, he still just wants to fight him. So we know that Hwang is a smoke demon, but Soji's just on an entirely different level. I'm so hyped to see him. I hope he doesn't lose. Like, being real, with how much hype Soji's getting, like, this man was introduced rounds ago at this point, right? Because he was introduced mid-Raiden fight, right? Like, I'm not tripping, because he showed up, I think he showed up literally mid-Raiden fight, or like right towards the start of that, because he had the whole interaction with Sasuke with Buddha against the 7 lucky gods. So he's sort of been sitting around getting built up for a while. Like, Nostradamus was introduced recently. Meanwhile, this man, he's been dodging fights so far, and I'm super intrigued to see where he goes and who he fights, and I hope he wins. But of course, not the other 2 smoke demons with them. With Soji are like, yes, we'd love to fight him too. And honestly, I would like to see that matchup, especially considering Sasuke, and at least Sasuke, I'm not sure about Isami, but Sasuke should directly scale to Hwang, even with him damaging Hades, because of how powerful Poseidon was hyped up to be, and like all their feats somewhat lightly correlating to Zeus, who they should be at least remotely comparable to. So crazy to see. And I love how Hearst's only response to these 3 idiots is like, geez, they are a bunch of lousy fighting nuts. And it's kind of great. I love how, from an outsider perspective looking in, all 3 of these stories just look crazy. Because why would you want to fight someone like him when he can disable your key flow like that? But apparently even Brunhild knows this. So, like, but to be fair, Brunhild knows everything. Like, if Brunhild didn't know, the story wouldn't happen. Like, it makes sense. But I guess that's what Brunhild was referring to when she says his technique, but he hadn't used his technique yet. So I'm wondering what he probably used it against Chiyo. That's probably why she knows about it, and that's probably why she's so invested on the idea of him striking the powers of Chiyo. But the interesting thing is, she says what could very well be called the hidden technique of Chiyo crossbow Forna tortoise ripple. And once again, it's noted as a ripple, which represents the disrupting of ki, but not necessarily the getting rid of it. However, kind of interested in the idea, is this Chiyo's technique that Hwang inherited from Chiyo himself, and or is it just the weapon? Because I'm pretty sure it's probably just the weapon. But at the same time, geez, that's a pretty cool ability. And as Brunhilde striking the pose, Gear's like, well, that's all cool and all, but if Hwang can see those stars and can pretty much win every fight by just consistently disabling his opponent and then stabbing them, why does he ever wear a blindfold? And what Gear says here is kind of true, but I don't really think so. But she says that when man obtains excessive ability, he must lose something in turn. That is what it means to be human. And while that is true, we see that Hades, who's once again being perceived within Hwang's, once again, no longer starry eyes. They're almost like reverse starry, where like they have points coming at the end of them with Hades centered within them, which is a really cool shot, I'm not gonna lie. We see that Hwang takes the damage that Hades took, or at least feels the damage that Hades took underneath his armor. And once again, Hades is getting some of that disrespect back in his tone, because he's like, what's the matter, king of man? And of course, what's the matter is that Hwang is in pain. But like, this drawback kind of seems a bit unfair. Like, Adam's drawback was the fact that if he overused the eyes, he could go blind and he would overwork his body. But that's not like an immediate repercussion drawback. The only drawback of Sasuke's technique is that if your opponent was a bit too fast for you, then you couldn't read them properly, and so on and so forth. Bada bing, bada boom. Your predictions could be wrong. Did Lubu have a drawback other than the fact that he was human? like the fact, I guess, excessive ability would be excessive strength in Lubu's case, so his body just couldn't handle. But then again, that wasn't even him. His body could handle his strength. Most weapons couldn't. That was the only issue. And then when you look at someone like Jack, did Jack even have a drawback with his special eyes? Because that's an excessive ability to read the colors of people's things. But I mean, maybe he's a psychopath. Is that the only drawback? Like, the whole drawback idea. Oh no, I don't know why my throat did that. The whole drawback idea is pretty cool. I'll give it that. But I don't know. I don't know if it really makes sense for it to be so blatantly out of his favor. Like, I feel kind of bad for Hwang here. Like, how was he supposed to deal with that? But of course, Hwang is like, this is the exact reason I keep that darn blindfold on. I hate fighting with my darn eyes because it flipping hurts. And then he notably taps his head and goes, it hurts. So, like a true man, he overcomes pain and smiles. So, there we go. Still feigning hold on. I'm still fiending to see Hades' backstory at this point. Like, I know we're mainly focused on Hwang and like all his cool stuff and all his cool abilities, but like, Hades, as cool as he is so far, I want to learn more about his past. And ironically enough, it seems like we're gonna go into Hwang's past more than we are gonna go into Hades. And like, I get it. We've seen a lot of the big three so far, but still, I want to see more of them. Hades seems unique to his brothers in multiple senses, and I want to see the whole, like, why are all of his attacks named after Persephone? Like, what is this? I want to see more of that. So that's the only thing I'm going to admit that I'm kind of disappointed in this chapter 4. However, introducing the key concept for Record of Ragnarok and showing off the idea of the variances in the system and introducing the drawback thing, as much as I think it's a little bit contrived for Hwang and how it's kind of crazy that his body will legit just turn on himself. Maybe that's going to be explained, right? Because I think that doesn't seem natural. Like every other weakness that a human had before when it came to their excessive special ability seemed, well, then again, I just forgot, Raiden's ability didn't seem natural at all either, or his drawback. But then again, his drawback was just that he had to hold back. So I don't really, well, no, then again, he did have super mutant muscles that he couldn't let out. But then again, it seems like Hwang got the real short end of the stick. And it makes me wonder, like, if he just immediately covered his eyes again after using them, if he didn't perceive the damage he did, would he be fine? Does looking at his opponent trigger that? And is that just literally like say, so like what's going to happen if Hwang dies or Hwang kills Hades? If he looks at him with the stars out, is he going to die himself? Does he just have to grin and bear it? Like say Hwang next time, like there's the foreshadowing, I assume, for how Hades could lose is that big old shiny star on his heart, right? Or in the general area of his chest where his heart would be. So I'm assuming if Hwang were to stab there, the damage would be reflected, right? But I don't know. This is just me. but I think you need your heart. So if Hwang looked at Hades after he killed him, would he just get like straight through and die? Would this be a draw? Or would it count as Hwang's win? Like, I don't see how Hwang can win this without putting the blindfold back on. Because, sure, he can grin and bear the pain, but if he wants to do any lethal damage, he can't do it with the eyes out, because as long as he glances, it appears that he's going to take the damage too. And any lethal damage being reflected back onto him, unless Hwang has some insane ability to like move his organs around, I don't see how he's exactly going to kill Hades here. Hades essentially just has to tough him out. And so far, it seems like Hades can do just that. Like, while Hades is taking extreme damage in this fight, it's not any like debilitating damage. Like, so far, every single time Hades is being knocked down, he pops up like pretty darn quickly. And sure, he's bleeding everywhere, but he's still standing there at the ready like, yo, what's the matter? King of Man, let's keep throwing these hands. Let's go. Let's run him up. Like, I don't necessarily see a defined way for Hwang to even win this fight, especially with this specific weakness being here. However, who knows? I wouldn't be shocked if he finds out some way to negate it or his ability evolves. And I am liking that it does appear to be a subconscious development. I do like in this chapter that does imply that Hades is slowly but surely gaining respect towards the King of Man. Like, slowly, he called him a king at the beginning of the chapter, so even if he resorts to King of Man later, it's pretty cool. And I love how Hades does have to go out of his way to put respect on Hwang's name once he starts using the air and stuff like that and figures it out. Like, he can't just ignore what Hwang's doing now, because even something as simple as a puff of air could lead to his demise. So it's really cool. I'm glad the stakes are being built up, though I am a bit concerned for Hwang's chances of victory at this point. However, this still was a really solid chapter. The art was mostly, actually no, the art was mostly very good. I'm trying to look, I'm doing a quick scan through the entire chapter to see any point where the art was like a little bit off. But the only time that I'd say the art kind of fumbled the bag a little bit was that first page with Hwang, because it doesn't even look like the same character. But other than that, like, the art was extremely dynamic in this chapter. The little details all over the art, like the patience to put all the blood drawing from Hwang, and the ability to show and maintain the damage consistency on Hades, from the bleeding eye to the hole in his chest to the hole in his stomach. Like, there's a whole ton of just little details, and amongst the legendary detail of art in this chapter, I'm still gonna give this chapter a solid 9 out of 10. I want to give it a perfect score. I think, I'll be nice. 10 out of 10. I can't necessarily think of something wrong with it. Ooh, that one charging panel of Hwang also looks a little bit weird. But regardless, it still was a really good chapter. I love pretty much everything about it, and I'm excited to see what happens next. Though I do wonder, like, where do we go from here, fight-wise? Unless Hades reveals some special ability of his own, I feel like we're kind of just going to be stuck here in this limbo for now. Are they just going to start throwing hands consistently now? Are we going to get some more backstory? I don't know. I'm assuming backstory, though. However, those are my thoughts on the chapter. Please tell me your thoughts on the chapter in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And hit that little notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, once again, do got a Patreon down below. I'd appreciate any support you're willing to give. Now, thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is that guy with the pencil, writing off.